What a difference a day makes. After day two of the Mayweather-McGregor World Tour in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, the general consensus seemed to be that this was a smashing success. But a funny thing happened in Brooklyn, New York tonight, and we will discuss that right here on the wrap-up show. Hello again, everyone. I'm Ariel Helwani, alongside our own Marc Raimondi. It is day three of the Mayweather-McGregor World Tour. It is coming to an end. As you can see, we are inside the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, New York. They are just wrapping things up. And Marc, what a difference, as I said. A completely different tone, a completely different vibe in the air. In Toronto, there was a joie de vivre, a genuine feeling of a happiness and excitement. And this whole thing was kind of reaching a crescendo, and people thought that it was going to break 5 million pay-per-view buys. And then tonight, it all changed. If people at home missed it, describe what happened.
Wow, the air is out of the Maymac World Tour balloon after tonight. It's unfortunate because we were even riding high after Toronto and very excited about what was to come. And tonight it all kind of went awry. The audio in the arena was bad. People wondering at home why the crowd didn't seem into what Floyd and Conor were saying. It was because they couldn't hear what they were saying. That is so crucial to stuff like this, especially when it's going to be just them giving speeches and doing back and forth. You have to hear what they're saying. The crowd was so integral in Toronto. It was one of the biggest parts of the entire experience was the crowd and the chants and the reactions. There was none of that in Brooklyn. And then, I mean, other things went awry too. I felt like that. There's a lot of mic time for these guys, as you say in pro wrestling. There's been a lot. This is the third one in a row. Everyone is tired. Everyone is cranky. You saw it a little bit on stage where it got a little chippy too between the two teams. For many reasons, this one was a little bit of a mess.
Okay, so let's talk about it from the beginning. First of all, it started around 2 hours late. So you got the impression that the crowd here was growing a little restless, and they were kind of just wondering, okay, like, when is this thing going to start? Then they bring out Swiss Beats. That was all right. He starts talking about a feud with Timbaland, which was just totally out of left field. But then they bring out Dougie Fresh, and that was just, what was that? How would you describe the Dougie Fresh impromptu concert?
Man, honestly, we were watching Dougie Fresh leave the stage after that was all over, and I felt genuinely sympathetic for the man. I don't know who put him up to going out there
I
because
think he lost a bet.
I don't know what it was. Maybe it was just like, hey, if you want to come into this press conference, you got to go out there. And they fed him to the lions because all this crowd wanted for 2 hours was Conor and Floyd. They've been chomping at the bit, and they got an impromptu, I guess, concert from Dougie Fresh,
Sure.
who's like a legend. He's like
Sure.
a pioneer.
I know.
And man, I don't know what that guy did to some. He lost a bet or he did something to somebody, but he was kind of thrown to the wolves, and it was just a disaster.
Yeah, they tried to use him to maybe stall a little bit. The music choice was odd. Anyhow, in the end, they finally come out. And I thought right off the bat it felt weird because it felt almost too forced. It felt a little too pro wrestling, like they were making their big entrances. And yes, we saw that in Toronto and Los Angeles, but in those cities, they were coming through the crowd, and it wasn't like with the big ramp and everything. And of course, Conor dressed a little differently this time. He wore a fur coat with, I think, leather pants, no shirt. I mean, he looked like Shawn Michaels. He looked like a pro wrestler. And Floyd Mayweather comes out draped in the Irish flag once again. And just right off the bat, forget about the audio issues. It just felt like everyone was just trying a little too hard. Did you get that impression as well?
Yeah, 100%. I did love McGregor's outfit. I thought that was fantastic. And at that time, before they started speaking, I was all in again. I was all in on Toronto, and I think I even said to you, they're almost reinventing how to promote a fight. I was wrong, ladies and gentlemen, because what happened after that was just not good on so many levels. Very forced. Again, this is a lot of time that these guys are talking to big crowds, and part of it is them just running out of things to say. McGregor even said that Floyd he says the same thing pretty much every tour stop, and McGregor is trying to do new things, but it didn't quite work out today. He went on the ramp and he was talking about the race issue. And
Before we get to that, let's
yeah.
just talk about the difference between experiencing this in the arena and experiencing it at home. I mentioned on Twitter that this was a complete change of, I don't know, vibe and tone from Toronto, and it was a 180 essentially, right? And people were like, oh, it bombed and all this stuff, and I get that. But the issue is we could not hear what they were saying. Like, I could only make out like every 10th word. It was just all noise. And so that, right off the bat, leaves the crowd just kind of sitting there, and it kind of felt like there were crickets. And I think at some point Conor just, threw up his hands and said, this is not, because he only spoke for what, 5 to 8 minutes? I mean, it was very short. So that was a major fail. Whatever happened here, at the beginning you could hear, but then once they changed the audio for some reason in here, it completely killed the entire thing.
It's so weird because not only does it enhance the experience for the viewer, the crowd noise and the crowd reactions, it also enhances the experience for those doing the talking on stage. So he's saying things and getting no reaction, thinking, wow, I just killed instead of killing it.
Right.
When it really was more just not hearing what he was saying. And I spoke to Owen Roddy, Conor McGregor's boxing coach, striking coach, afterward, and he was not aware. They just thought that because they were so close, they were on stage, they couldn't hear. They thought the entire arena could hear, and I was explaining to him, no one in the arena could actually hear what they were saying, and it was very flat because of that.
So my impression after day 3 is that day 1 was kind of like, wow, I can't believe we're here, and we'll work through the wrinkles and we'll figure it out. Day 2 was a smashing success. I even said to you before this, I wonder if that was, the apex, and afterwards we will have jumped the shark. Day 3 kind of feels like, with all the parties involved, the gloves are off. Showtime Conor, Showtime UFC, Conor Floyd, the two camps. It feels like everyone's kind of sick of each other, and this fake, smile that they were putting on back in Los Angeles is completely gone, and now they're really telling us how they feel about each other. And so let's bring up this simmering storyline that's been brewing, right? The racial stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Conor tried to address it, which at first I was like, wow, I can't believe that he's actually talking about this. Did it work, or was it a fail?
No, it did not work because...
What did he do, first of all?
Well, he made some dumb jokes. He said that he's half black, half from the belly button down, which I did hear and I wish I hadn't heard. And he said, and then he did a dance for all of his African-American female fans, which is like something out of like a bad 1987 pro wrestling like heel move, something just silly. It made no sense. And then he brought also Floyd Mayweather's family into things, and he was talking to them, and that upset Floyd Mayweather.
I totally missed that until after when Floyd brought it up, and we could talk about it, but I did not hear any of that.
Right. I just wasn't sure what he was going for. I just think that, like you said, maybe trying to do too much, maybe try to get into Mayweather's head. I don't know, but whatever it was, it did not work.
And so I think that this also falls on the promoters, the event organizers. Essentially what they're saying to these guys is, here's a microphone, here's 30 minutes, get some fresh material. Everyone's watching, just because they're in Brooklyn, everyone saw Toronto, who's here, right, and saw Los Angeles. To ask these guys to come up with fresh material, like we're talking at this point like 90 minutes or so combined, is asking a lot. And I think that they're just kind of grasping at straws at this point. I think that Conor, why would he address that? That does nothing for the fight promotion, but I think that it's become a storyline and it's something to talk about. It doesn't help his feud with Floyd. You spoke to Floyd, I spoke to Floyd afterwards. He seems bothered by this, right? He finally addressed it as well, and he seems annoyed. That's the impression that I got.
He does, and it really came to a head today because there were some simmering things, and we spoke about it yesterday in Toronto that McGregor was saying, and Mayweather and his camp really didn't. They were just kind of letting it go. But like you said today, things are different. People are cranky. It's been a long tour now. This is the third day in a row they're seeing each other. These are people that they put on a face for a few weeks that this fight has been going on. Everyone on both sides. Where there's some history between people on both sides too. That isn't so great, including Dana White and Floyd Mayweather. But now all that it seems to have been cast aside, and now they're kind of back to how they felt previously. They've forgotten how much money they're all about to make in a month, and they're back to not liking each other again. And it's manifesting itself in many different ways, and now the fans are noticing it.
Okay, should we also address, did they do irreparable harm, or are we just sort of dissecting one night, and come August 26th, this will feel like a distant memory?
Probably more the latter.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think they lost pay-per-view buys tonight, because I think that in arena was a much worse experience, which is actually very funny because I thought in LA the in arena experience was really good.
Yes.
The at home experience was not good. It was the opposite tonight. I thought that the in arena experience was bad, but people at home were like, no, we could hear it fine. it wasn't really great what they were saying. Although there were some moments, Mayweather throwing the money, some funny stuff like there.
But again, I think it wasn't great because they couldn't hear each other.
Yeah, of course, because you can't hear each other, then you
Right.
can't play off it. Conor McGregor, we were saying this on Monday. He is a counterpuncher when it comes to the trash talk. He has to respond, and if he can't hear anything, he can't respond to anything.
Yeah. What about like the sub feuds are so interesting, right? Showtime and the UFC have not seen eye to eye dating back to the Strikeforce deal, right? When Zuffa bought Strikeforce and they were kind of forced into this relationship. Dana White before the event says he thinks that Showtime cut Conor McGregor's mic, and that he thinks this whole thing is too loosey goosey, and he wouldn't do it this way. Then afterwards, Steven Espinoza telling us that Dana White wants to make it all about him. He's the brand. We don't do that sort of thing. Again, this wasn't being said 2 days ago. Trust me, I know they were trying to play nice. I was a victim of that relationship. This is not happening anymore. Kind of interesting, right?
Incredibly interesting.
That was 48 hours ago.
It feels like a lot longer,
Yes.
even for us, and it must feel like longer for them. But something strange happened in between Toronto and New York, and you alluded to it. The entire thing seemed fun and somewhat friendly. Of course, there was some raw talk back and forth, but it was funny. It was
Like performance art.
right. It was almost more of a comedy. It was
Yeah.
funny. Everyone was laughing. There are great pictures of McGregor, trash talking Mayweather to his face, and Mayweather's team is laughing. That did not happen tonight. There was no laughing. There was almost a skirmish on stage between the two camps. It was a totally different
Did you
vibe.
feel like it was going to boil over?
I did, and
I thought it was
I'm-
going to get into a brawl, like a full-on brawl.
I'm a little concerned about London, about that happening, because there's a lot of I mean, Dylan Dennis is up there. There are people
But
who
he's not going to London.
well, maybe that's not the worst thing in the
Yeah.
world, but there are people up there who may want to get into a fight. It was really weird.
Because it's the last stop, right?
It's the last
You don't have
stop.
to see them again.
Who knows? I don't know what the motivation is, but tonight it felt so different from yesterday. It just felt hostile and angry more than just the
Sure.
fun and airiness of Toronto.
So things seemed to get a little testy when Floyd Mayweather said form Voltron to his crew. They got up. Conor's team got involved. Dylan Dennis is in the mix. Owen Roddy, Artem Lobov, the bodyguards, all this stuff and more. Does Floyd deserve some blame here? Had he not said that, would it have not turned into this little kind of quasi melee?
Certainly, it seemed like that was something that was planned.
Okay.
He said, if you say form Voltron and then all of a sudden all your goons kind of gather around, that obviously means that there was something premeditated there. And then Floyd kind of just did like some shadow boxing, kind of ran up the stage as they were dealing with that. I'm not sure what that was all about. I think that was something that could have been funny if it happened like yesterday, when there was a little bit more of a breezy vibe to it. But today it felt like it was actually going to get into a big brawl.
And it's interesting. Yesterday I mentioned that they're showing incredible restraint by not touching each other, right? They're getting into each other's faces for like 3-4 minutes, and they're just skirting the line. But this time it felt like they were trying to cross the line at times. There was one point where Conor hit his hat, couldn't get it off.
Yeah.
Another time it looked like he tried to
did.
knock him with the shoulder, the Voltron thing. And I'm wondering, do you think something needs to be done for London? Do they need to change things? Do they need to go back to the, typical press conference format? How do they avoid what happened here tonight?
Yeah, I wouldn't be against some kind of a format change for London, just because it feels like this is played out a little bit. Even though if the audio was better, it probably would have come across a little bit better to us in the arena. I think that maybe just a formal press conference setting would be fine. London is going to be very interesting because that's going to be a raucous crowd, as we know. That's going to be the most pro-McGregor crowd and possibly the most excitable crowd. So that could also lead to more tensions on stage with Floyd Mayweather's people, who he said he has 3 private jets that he's been flying on. He has a crew of 3 private jets that he's been doing this world tour on. He's bringing a lot of people with him, and they are McGregor's team is outnumbered. Maybe it will not be that way in London, but it's a combustible element.
Yeah, it really is. Leonard Ellerby told us that Floyd is a lot more popular in England than we think he is. So he's actually thinking it's not going to be, 100% in favor of Conor McGregor. That remains to be seen. And so we were having fun sort of scoring every stop. Tell us, what's your score after stop number 3?
Well, I thought it was 10-9 Mayweather in LA on Tuesday. I think that was Tuesday. I'm not really sure. My brain's a little bit scrambled. Yesterday in Toronto was certainly 10-9 McGregor. Some would even say 10-8 McGregor. And today, I would give 10-9 to Mayweather. I'm not in love with that pick. Even Conor said he would give it a draw. He said he would give it a draw. So even he's not confident that he won today's stop. Just a lot of weird things happened today. They have a chance to turn it around tomorrow. But right now, I say it's 2-1 for Floyd.
29-28.
29-28, if you will.
And also, what I think is interesting to kind of keep an eye on for tomorrow, if for whatever reason, and we hope this is not the case, London falls flat, I think all of a sudden Toronto becomes this anomaly, right? All of a sudden people look back at LA and say, oh, you know, there were some technical issues, the mic, whatever, Conor was off his game. Oh, Brooklyn was a wash. London flat. But Toronto was awesome, as opposed to us leaving Toronto yesterday saying, okay, you know, it built from LA, Toronto was amazing, we're expecting Brooklyn. You know what I'm saying? I really feel like the legacy of this press tour, and I mentioned yesterday, if Conor somehow pulls off this upset, the legacy and the legend of this press tour will grow exponentially over the years. Now it kind of feels like the legend and the legacy, it's kind of at stake tomorrow in London. Not trying to get too dramatic here, but it does feel like the way we will view this entire 4-part series really is up in the air when we thought it was kind of going to be a foregone conclusion that it was going to be a smashing success just 24 hours ago. Do you agree?
I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think that there is a little bit of pressure on them, and not just McGregor Mayweather, but the entire support staff, because part of it today wasn't really a failing of either of the fighters. It was just issues with the audio, I guess, with Barclays Center. Showtime is saying that the issue on Tuesday in LA was a Staples Center issue. So, I mean, there's a lot of money to be made from this fight, of course, but everything has to go right for them to maximize their potential. Look, no one is going to cry if they're going to lose a few pay-per-view buys.
I don't think they lost. Let's be honest.
No, I'm not.
Everyone's still interested in the fight.
I don't think
they're all kind of rolling their eyes today, but they still are as interested, in my opinion.
I agree, and I think people will watch tomorrow in London, but it just doesn't feel the same way as it did yesterday when we were having this conversation in Toronto. It's a very different vibe, and maybe that's just us being on tour after UFC 213, after the tough 25 finale, not getting much sleep. So maybe we're a little bit down too. But just looking at social media, it seems like everyone kind of feels that way too.
Two last quick things. If you were disappointed with the performance, whatever you want to call it, not really a press conference once again, but if you were disappointed with that, I do urge you to watch the interviews after the fact, because those were the best of the week in a strange twist. Again, the gloves are off. I think the guys wanted to get a little more off their chest. Just phenomenal stuff. And I must also say that for me personally, it has been a revelation just sort of seeing how Floyd Mayweather works, how savvy he is with the media. I mean, he spent so much time just talking to us, wanting to get his message out. And a couple times was saying, you guys, like, it was almost like, did you forget who I am and what I've done and how I thrive in these situations? I really think that, I have to admit, I wrote him off. I thought that it would be, 10-4 rounds, let alone 10-9 rounds, 10-8 rounds. He has really proven to us that at 40 years young, he still got it. And he is as smart as ever when it comes to promotion and media and just the psychology, the mental warfare. That to me has been the big story thus far. That has actually been fascinating to watch him work in front of our eyes, for the first time, at least for me.
100%, and I feel like both of them think on a different level than other prize fighters do. Even with McGregor, actually, just like us scoring these world tour stops, he's thinking about Tuesday in LA. He feels like he won that because his things went more viral, the fuck you suit and that kind of thing. Like, I didn't even think that he was thinking that way, but he does think along those lines, and it's very surprising. But Mayweather's experience in these spots, he's been doing it for so long and at such a high level, I think that is shining through now that we're in deep now in this tour.
So there's good news and bad news now. The good news is they've got one more day to get it right. The bad news is our time has come to an end on the World Tour. Yes, we are tapping out. We actually can't make it to London in time to cover the fourth leg of the tour. It's very unfortunate. I think we both want to kind of see this thing through. But again, logistically, we don't have private planes like the Mayweather and McGregor camp, so we have to say goodbye. But it has been a blast covering this from LA on Tuesday, Toronto on Wednesday, here in Brooklyn on Thursday. In fact, Marc himself didn't even know that he would make it past LA. Very impromptu, flying by the seat of his pants. But I speak for myself here, one of the most memorable experiences of my career, and it has been fun covering it with you, Esther and Casey.
Yeah, it's been a great time, and no altercations between us yet.
But the night is young here in Brooklyn. We've got plenty more for you, a lot more coverage. Check it out on our YouTube page. But for now, we shall say goodbye. Thank you so much for watching our coverage of the Mayweather-McGregor World Tour. I assure you more craziness is to come, but it's over for us here in Brooklyn. Again, thank you and good night from the BK.